When I first started reselling, I thought there was only one way to be successful flipping clothes online: thrifting great brands and items with a high sell-through rate. And I was determined to scale our business only selling these great brands. That determination nearly destroyed our business. And in today's video, we're going to show you what went wrong and how we went from nearly shutting down our business to building a six-figure reselling empire. Hey everyone, my name is Bethany.
And my name is Sean.
And together we are
Trash Pandas Thrift.
We are a
I'm going to put the logo there like a second before. It's going to cover my face. Over here.
We are a six-figure reselling business, and here on this YouTube channel, we share with you all of our tips, tricks, and experiences, all so that you can start and grow your very own reselling business too. Today, I'm going to tell you everything about what went wrong to start and how we turned everything around and built a business I would not have even recognized when I first started reselling. And that's because, and Sean can actually even attest to this
guy.
When I first started reselling, honestly, I just got lucky. Full stop. I just got lucky. I only sold on Mercari and Poshmark, and I would source great brands, high retail, things that I went all of my childhood and my young adulthood saying, oh yeah, that's the kind of brands everyone wears, right? They're high retail, they're in the mall. Not even checking comps or anything like that. And everything would sell. I would sell them on Poshmark, I would sell them on Mercari. After a little while after, I discovered comps, I discovered eBay, and I discovered the concept of a sell-through rate. And if you've never heard of sell-through rate before, that is a term that a lot of resellers use as a strategy in order to source items to resell online. Sell-through rate means the amount of an item that is sold versus listed within 90 days. It becomes a percent, and that percent at 100% is the best that you can get. It means that an item is listed just as often as it's sold, and that's what you're looking for if you want to flip your items quickly. So I said, okay, I'm only going to source those. I'm only going to go to the thrift store. I'm only going to source items with that high sell-through rate as close to 100% as possible. But then those items were often similar to the same great brands that I started out with. And all of those great brands, the thrift store knew too. So they became really high priced at the thrift stores. And over time, the same items, honestly, whenever I would keep doing comps on them, they were worse and worse, and they started selling less and less, and as the price for them just went up. So Sean sat me down even before we even joined together.
Well, I didn't sit you down. I was going to say, and actually, I still remember this conversation. We were in Austin, Texas. Mm-hmm. We were sitting in an H-E-B parking lot. And H-E-B is basically a local Texas chain. It's my favorite chain of any grocery store anywhere.
Oh, H-E-B.
But H-E-B, shout out
bomb.
H-E-B, sponsor Trash Pandas Thrift right now, H-E-B. Throw some cash our way. all you guys seem to be thinking that we're only, my favorite comments are when people comment and they say that we make all our money from YouTube when we've been on YouTube for 4 months. I wish. Anyways, we were sitting in the H-E-B parking lot. And I remember that people were, me and Bethany were talking about the business, and she was saying, people are making all this money, and I'm starting to make a decent amount of money in sales, but I'm rarely bringing any more than like $2,000 or $3,000 a month home on $7,000 or $8,000 a month in sales. And I looked at her and I said, well, hold on. Something does not make sense here. If you're doing $7,000 or $8,000 a month in sales, even at a 50% profit margin, that's $3,500 to $4,000 a month. So what is happening to the rest of the money? We realized she was really only operating at maybe 25, 30, 35%, whatever that number is. But it was a very low percentage. And that's because her cost of goods was very high. And she was only able to put so much money into buying more cost of goods because she really wasn't selling a bunch of pieces. We weren't doing high volume, or she wasn't doing high volume because of how much she was spending, but she didn't realize that at the time. And you can't really increase your volume if you're spending so much on your cost of goods and your profit is just plummeting more and more and more. And these great brands were really driving that cost up.
Yeah, I was not a Goodwill outlet girl to start, not at all. I was a thrift store ride or die. And as we sat in that car and I realized I had a Goodwill outlet 5 minutes away from our house and I did not go at all, even though we'd been there for like 8 months, there was something wrong and we needed to change that. And I already told this story before. The first time I walked in, I ran out and I kept making myself go back and go back and go back. And eventually the Goodwill outlet, it became my second home. but it also became a wake-up call because the Goodwill outlet that we frequented, honestly, competition can be crazy. And that's the case for a lot of Goodwill outlets across the country. We're all kind of looking for the same items. Even though, yes, everyone is always looking for something different, there's a foundational layer of things that everyone wants. But there was also this whole bunch of section of items that everyone was leaving behind. Everyone was leaving behind these items at our Goodwill outlet with great styles, super on-trend pieces, and they were styles that I felt like I saw before. I didn't really understand what style aesthetics were, but I knew that they were on trend. But a lot of them were oversaturated, or they just had bad comps. Maybe they were vintage items, oversaturated brands like Free People,
Yes.
and people just didn't want them. And they said, "Here, you want this?" And I said, "No, I don't think I do," because at the time, I didn't know how to sell it. I didn't know how to sell these items that had bad comps when I looked them up a certain way. And some didn't even have comps at all because they were unique. They were one of a kind. And a lot of it was vintage. We just, sometimes in the beginning, especially when Sean was selling hard goods, we'd go to the bins together. And that was when I started teaching Sean about clothes after he joined the business. And even as a unit, we couldn't find enough great brands. And we couldn't find enough items with high sell-through rates while we were both at the bins together.
The problem was that I would bring her these style-based pieces, and I would say to her, "This is so cute. Why don't you sell this?" And she would say, "Because it doesn't have a high sell-through rate, or because it's not a well-known brand, or the ASP, the average sales price, is too low." And I was looking at her, and I was saying, "Dude, we're trying to grow this business together. We're trying to scale. We can't just pigeonhole ourselves. Why don't you try it?" And apparently, I didn't remember this until we had a conversation, but one day I brought her this beautiful maxi vintage dress. And I brought it to her, and it was one of the, I always bring, for every 10 pieces I would bring her, she would put back, no joke, 8 of those 10 pieces. And a lot of them, yes, granted, not great, but I would say probably 5 or 6 of those pieces were pieces that we now do sell, because a lot of them were Maxi J. Crew dresses. They were 100% linen, I don't know, some kind of random brand. I like how you're sinking. Yeah, these chairs in our
I just went down.
These chairs shrink sometimes, but they were these brands that we now sell because we understand style aesthetics and we understand trend-based selling as well. But at the time, I would bring her these pieces and I would get so frustrated because I'm like, dude, it's money. This is money. Someone bought this item, and at the time, we just didn't know how to sell them. So it was a huge gap. It was the ASP being too low, or just focusing on great brand and sell-through rate, and it was pigeonholing us to a point where we could not grow the business. Now the cost of goods was lower, but just because our COGS were lower doesn't necessarily mean that we can scale significantly, because we're still not selling that many more pieces. As a matter of fact, it might have been less than what we might be able to find at some stores because it's so much competition at the bins.
Yeah, I hated leaving behind items that I knew I could sell. I just didn't really know how. I didn't know where to start. And the answer was exactly what Sean said. Just try it and see what happens. I literally remember the exact dress that you brought me. And I mean, if I would have left it behind, I'm sure it would have happened with something else. But I'm really glad it happened when it did, because it completely exploded our business. Our business was changed forever. It became a beautiful monster, like the little baby seed of what it is now. A blend of everything, a blend of style-based reselling, a blend of sell-through rates, a blend of great brands. But especially the number one thing that we learned was flexibility, and adaptation was key for us and honestly for everyone in the reseller community.
Yeah, there's a couple of money dials that you have when it comes to reselling, and you have to figure out which ones you can turn to make more money in your business, to grow and scale your business, because at the end of the day, your gross number doesn't matter. Bethany was making 7 or 8 and only bringing in 2 or 3, so that gross number doesn't mean anything. That's at $8,000 a month, that's $96,000 a year. That's $4,000 away from being a 6-figure reseller.
Insane.
But she wasn't really a 6-figure reseller. She could have probably made more money working part-time at Starbucks, right? Or full-time at Starbucks.
Yeah.
She probably could have made more money doing that at the time. And it just made it so difficult because you're looking at that gross number, but you're not really seeing the take-home unless you're being very vigilant and diligent with your numbers, which I always say you 100% should be. So flexibility and adaptability are extremely important in your business. It doesn't have to mean that you start doing style-based sourcing. It doesn't have to mean that you start selling kids' clothes like we do, or doing wholesale like we do. What it means is you need to do whatever it takes in your situation, with your locality, in your sourcing situation, to make the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of effort in the most impactful way possible. And if that means lowering your cost of goods by going to the bins, that's what it means. If it means adding in whatnot, if it means adding in a new platform, if it means any of these things, you have to be flexible and adaptable. When Goodwill raises its prices, you have to be flexible and adaptable. When you have an account on a platform and for whatever reason you have a Vero on eBay because you forgot an item with a what do you call those pictures?
A stock photo.
A stock photo. And then you get like an
photos.
extra fee or something like that. You have to be flexible and adaptable to survive in business just overall.
100%. I did not want to go to the Goodwill outlet. Like, there was no, like, I can't stress this enough. And it's funny because we like to say, like, oh, we're like Goodwill bins influencers. We're like, everyone go to the Goodwill outlet. Everyone go to the Goodwill bins. I could not imagine myself saying that 4 years ago. Like, I would be mortified. Truly. I just wanted to have this peaceful experience, my me time. Sean would drop me off at the thrift store, and I would just go rack by rack by rack, and I would pick out all of these delightful items, and I'd look at the price tag and it'd be like $9.99, and I'd be like, oh, it's okay. I can flip it for 30 or 35. That's great. That's my average goal, right? And the funniest thing is, to be quite honest, our average sales price didn't even dip that much once we started going to the Goodwill outlet. It stayed constant at around $30. It dipped to $25 sometimes during summer, but it really didn't drastically decrease from when I was thrift store shopping. It was because we fundamentally changed what can I make money off of. For us, in our locality, in our situation, that was style-based items and vintage. And for you, that can be something different.
It probably will be to something different. And the reality is you just have to continue adapting. Adapting equals survival.
Yep.
The next part of this is that adapting and flexibility and creativity equals thriving.
Yes.
So you need to go from just the ability where you're looking at everything and you're saying, okay, everything is going awfully. I'm not making money. This is awful. Everything is awful. I hate the thrift store. I hate the pricing. I hate the buyers on these platforms. You need to go from that to, okay, how do I adapt and get back to a baseline of survival? Then when you're at that baseline of survival, you can say, okay, how do I be creative and grow my business? Because we went from, to struggle to when I joined the business and we started making more money because our COGS were lowered significantly to a really good survival base point. But then getting from that point of survival and getting by to how do we grow and scale and thrive and make more money in the least amount of time with the least amount of effort. That's how we then did that, by being creative and selling kids' clothes and wholesaling and trying different platforms like Depop. It became our second biggest platform, even though Bethany and I were predominantly eBay sellers for the most part for the majority of our reselling career, right?
Yeah.
So, and then now, whatnot, wholesale, all these different things that we try and we experiment with, sending things to the real. There's just so much opportunity to grow. You just have to figure out how to do that. But first, you gotta get to survival, and then from survival, you can get to thriving. And it just takes some flexibility, and you have to be willing to change things. You cannot be stuck in like the 1800s or 1900s version of reselling,
I wanted to put this video out there especially because often you can look at resellers online or even resellers near you, and even if they're doing great at this present moment, a lot of resellers have a similar story of a time in their business where they were confused, they were lost, or they just didn't know where to go. They didn't know what to do. And it is just so comforting, I think, to know that there is going to be low points. There are low points in reselling. They're going to happen to you, even if they haven't happened already. That's okay. It is getting up from there, making sure you survive, and then getting to the point where you can thrive. And that is what takes creativity.
Yeah, and I definitely want to implore you to think about ways that you can grow your business by being more flexible and adaptable. And I also want to ask you an uncomfortable question, which is to sit down and run your numbers.
Yes.
Run your numbers with your cost of goods, with your platform fees, and with all the other miscellaneous fees that are associated with running your business, and really sit down and see how much am I grossing and how much am I actually putting into my bank account every single month after all of these fees and your taxes. It's very, very important that you make sure you do all of these things so you could see what you're actually making, because you might not even know how much you're actually making. Very few people actually do, not just resellers, but very few business owners actually know how much they're making after all of their associated fees. And once you do that, you can see, am I in survival, or am I in a point where I can then go to thrive? Do I need to get to survival, or do I need to go to thrive? And if you just need to get to survival, adapt, adjust, try everything. Do what you must to get to survival. And then from survival, when you're there and you're like, okay, things are going good. The past 90 days, I've been making consistent sales. I'm paying all of my bills. I'm profiting the amount that I feel comfortable at. Now it's time for me to get to that next level. Now you can add in some creativity and even more flexibility. The flexibility to fail and to fail forward. And to realize just because I fail at this one thing doesn't mean that I didn't learn something that can now propel me to this next stage in my business.
If you heard me like in my story of how this all came about and how we went from the point where honestly I wasn't even sure if I was going to continue reselling 4 years ago, 3 years ago almost, to the point where I can't even imagine sitting there and saying, oh, I don't want to go to the Goodwill outlet. The key word I kept saying is I kept trying. I made myself keep trying. It's really just that try. It's the T word.
Yeah. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that it was helpful for you, us sharing our story. We've gotten some great feedback when we do make videos like this where we share our story and our experiences. And I hope that it's valuable for you, because like Bethany said, what's going on the outside isn't always what's going on the inside. Sometimes you see people posting on Instagram or on YouTube and you see this great 90-day total, this great gross number. And the reality is, number one, you don't know the net. And number two, even if the net is great, you don't know what it took to get there. And oftentimes we all have that journey, and oftentimes you just don't see what's going on behind closed doors. So I really do hope this was valuable for you guys. If you like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe. We put up videos every 2 days. We have been putting videos out every 2 days, so we're going to continue doing that as long as we can keep getting the content pushing. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, and we will see you, or Bethany will see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.